In this video, we'll review the answers to the quiz on the variance and standard deviation. Now, the first question on the quiz asks to consider the following population of n equals 5 values, where we have 14, 9, 11, 7, and 9. And then here we're asked to calculate the population variance, and it's equal to one of these 4 values. And then number 2 has the exact same variable x, the same values, and here we're asked to calculate the population standard deviation. So in the review of these answers, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and calculate the variance and standard deviation on these 5 values. We'll go through each of the steps that are required to get to those answers. So let's go ahead and get started. Now here are my 5 values once again for x. And then what we want to do as a review is there's 3 steps here. The first is we're going to find the mean, or mu. And then after that, we'll find x minus mu, and then we'll find x minus mu squared. And you can see that here in this table, which is partially filled out, but we'll fill in the rest of these values together. And then finally, after we have x minus mu and x minus mu squared, then we'll find the variance and the standard deviation. Okay, so our first step is to find the mean. And I went ahead and did that there. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. The mean, or mu, is equal to sum of x over n. So we're just going to add up all of these scores, 14 plus 9 plus 11 plus 7 plus 9, over 5, where 5 is just the number of values that we have. And that gives us 50 over 5, or 10. So our mean is equal to 10. Okay, that completes step 1. Now, for step 2, what we want to do is we're going to take each x score and subtract from it the mean, or the 10 that we just calculated. And we'll do that for each of these values here. Okay, and to save a bit of time, I went ahead and did that right here, so let's paste those in. Let's go ahead and review these. We have 14 minus the mean of 10, or 4. 9 minus the mean of 10, or negative 1. 11 minus 10, positive 1. 7 minus 10, which is negative 3. And then 9 minus 10, which is negative 1. And so we went ahead and found x minus mu. And one other thing we're going to do, while it's not required, we'll just do this as a check. And that is we're going to go ahead and sum up these x minus mu's. So we'll just add these values up together. So let's add the positives first, and then go ahead and add the negatives after that. So here we have 4 and 1, that's 5. And then negative 1, negative 3, and negative 1 is negative 5. So positive 5 plus negative 5 is 0. So this value here is equal to 0. And that actually is what we want every time to make sure that we perform these calculations correctly. If we don't get a 0 for this value when we sum or add these up, then something went wrong and we want to go back and check our answers. And as a review, this value here, x minus mu, is known as a deviation score. And it indicates how far a given x value deviates or departs from the mean. 14, for example, deviates from the mean of 10 by 4 points. And since it's positive, that means it's 4 points above the mean. 9 deviates from the mean of 10 by 1 point. And since it's negative, that tells us it's below the mean, and so on. Okay, next what we want to do is go ahead and calculate the second part to number 2. And that is we want to find the squared deviation scores, or x minus mu squared. So I went ahead and did that, and here what we have is we take each deviation score, the first one is 4 for example, and then we square that value, and that gives us 16. And we have negative 1 squared, that deviation score, which is 1. 1 squared, which also is 1. Negative 3 squared is 9, and then negative 1 squared is 1. And now what we want to do is we want to sum up these deviation scores. So in other words, if we add these together here, we get 16 plus 1, 17, 18, 27, 28. So the sum of those squared deviation scores is equal to 28. Now that's also referred to as SS, which is called the sum of the squares for short. And it really just means the sum of the squared deviation scores. But it just goes by sum of the squares, SS for short. Okay, but once again, it's the same thing. So we're done with calculating x minus mu and then x minus mu squared. And we went ahead and added up the x minus mu squares here as well. Next, our last step is to find the variance and the standard deviation of the population. And you can see the formulas here. So let's go ahead and plug these values in. SS here is 28, and then n, as we saw earlier, is 5. So this gives us 28 over 5, or 5.6. So the variance is equal to 5.6. Now the standard deviation is just the square root of the variance. If you look here, it's just this value, square root. So we really could just take the square root of 5.6, but we'll go ahead and take it through a couple of steps just to show the work. Okay, so we plugged in the values here. We have 28 over 5, and we take the square root of that, which gives us 2.37. So the standard deviation in this example is 2.37. So let's go ahead and remember these values for a minute. Variance is 5.6, standard deviation is 2.37. Now going back to our quiz questions, the variance is equal to 5.6, as we found just a moment ago, and the population standard deviation is equal to 2.37. This concludes the video on the quiz review for the variance and standard deviation. Thanks for watching.